The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine. It's funny because we've been talking for like the past hour, but that's okay. But anyway, coffee?
Definitely coffee. And since we have been talking for the past hour, for our listeners, this is not the first cup of coffee that I've had this morning.
Mm-hmm.
There's never too much coffee. So,
Well,
not in my estimation. Well, I guess that could get dangerous, but...
Mm-hmm. All things in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a poison. It's just the dose.
Wow.
Drop some wisdom on you this morning, yeah. Oh, but this is a really fun episode because it's one letter.
One giant letter. Episode 55. And I think we mentioned at the end of the last episode, but if we didn't, we're just going to give the title of this episode right away. This one's simply called The Honeymoon. Yeah, we don't need more than that, so I'm not going to give away anything that happens in this episode in the intro here that we're doing. I'm just going to go into some of the typical things that we go into. If you're on YouTube, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie podcast channel, we very much appreciate that. I'll pause a moment here if I have to and be like, click the button. Click the button to subscribe so you know that when the new episodes are coming out, and turn on your notifications so you get alerted when there's new episodes for the Love Sweetie podcast on YouTube. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a review. If you're able to do so, we'd very much appreciate that. And of course, you'll want to check out all the amazing content at www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. That's where you're going to find all of the photo galleries, the timelines, the family tree, and all the other things that might help you fill in the gaps, especially if you're new to the Love Sweetie podcast. Welcome if you're new to the story here. And then one last thing I did want to call out. Jamie, when this episode drops, it's going to be Mother's Day.
So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
And happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a special day.
Mm-hmm.
It's really funny because I became a mother when I got pregnant, but my daughter, I went into labor on Mother's Day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But then she's like, no, I don't want to be born on Mother's Day. I want my own birthday. So she was born at like 1:00 in the morning. So she waited to the one that made me the mother. I'll have to go give her a hug. But and one of our favorite mothers, Miss Sweetie, has really, this one was a good one.
Yeah.
This was a good one. I'm very excited for people to hear this. And we are definitely going to let Sweetie talk a lot in today's episode.
And so here's part 1 from August 1947. 37 South Love Lane, Norwood, Pennsylvania, August 11th, 1947. Dear Mama, Daddy, Jean, Florence, Sister, Bill, Frank, Meta, and all the kids. 3 months is a pretty good estimate, Daddy, but now that I've started, I think I can crowd 3 months into this letter and sort of bring you up to date, if I start way back. I'm sure I told you that Florence's brother, Verney, met her at the station and relieved her of some of her load, and I watched them for as far as I could see when the train pulled out. You never did write and say whether you kept R, or if she left him at home with Rose. I supposed Rose did keep him, or I would have heard of his doings there. Louis was quite noisy while she was with us, and behaved in his meanest manner, but when she had left, he straightened up and behaved very well. We got into Englewood, and Frank met us, with a hold en route on the Trailblazer for me, and with some trepidation. On Frank's part as well as mine, I got on the train without reservations. I didn't have very long to visit with them. We enjoyed seeing Susie, and we met Maida's nephew. But when the train came in, I was worried about getting my seats, and so just hurried on. The conductor and the train man came for tickets, and when I explained the situation, they looked on the list and found me. Frank listed me as Demaree. They seemed almost relieved to see me, inquired why I'd missed my other reservations, and when I said the floods had kept the roads closed, they asked if I'd gotten my feet wet, and went on their way. We were seated behind 4 wearing red fezzes with black tassels that intrigued Louis. He got tired of sitting still and walking up the aisle a little ahead of their seats. He would turn and face them, looking at each black face in turn, as long as they didn't look at him. He would stand there and gaze at them, but just as soon as they looked at him, his eyes got big, and he'd come tearing down past them to get up on the seat with me. He walked the aisles a little ways up and a little ways back, and people talked to him, and he talked back, and once he came weaving back up the aisle, wearing somebody's fur scarf. He had just helped himself to it while the owner was at the diner. I had to take it away from him and go back along the seats and guess where it might have come from. Lucky guess. The little Jell-O box with potato chips that Mama fixed for him at Jean's proved to be the most worthwhile thing I had, aside from the thermos of milk. He ate potato chips and put them back in the box, and when they were all gone, I put a few pieces of candy in it at a time, and he was entertained again for a while. He did not seem to care much about looking out the window. For one thing, we were going so fast that things got by him too quickly, and he was more entertained by the people around us. They gave him cookies and gum, and thought he was very nice to take the trip so well. I carried sheets, blankets, pajamas, and diapers, so when the night time came, I undressed him, made down his bed, and he went off to sleep as long as I was right there. The people watched me and commented, "When she travels, she does it the hard way, doesn't she?" "Nah, she does it the right way." I'm sure it was the right way. Lou, Elizabeth, and Lou's mother met us at the train. We were an hour late. We came right home after dropping Elizabeth off at work, and after breakfast we went to bed for a little rest. Louis did not know any of them right at first. He would not look at them, but held on to me. Lou carried him, and he cried until we got to the car. When he opened the door and stood him on the seat, he gave a little chirp of recognition, rushed to honk the horn, and was immediately at home. From then on, he was willing to talk, and recognized them, and called Lou Daddy. The house was dirty, and after a few vain attempts to get at it, I went and bought wallpaper cleaner, and thought I'd clean it good. I borrowed a ladder and set about the job, but what a job! I found that the walls were so dirty with coal black, etc., that I'd have to go over it 2 or 3 times to get it clean. That meant the cost of the wallpaper cleaner would be high, and so would the time and labor involved. My own labor, of course. So I just took my foot in my hand and walked up the pike and bought some Chemtone and started painting. I did the big bedroom in rose and the baby's room in blue. Lou was somewhat flabbergasted when he got home and found me cleaning, rather painting, on my own. Those rooms came out so well that we decided we might as well do the whole house. But just at that time, the Navy said that the men had been working so hard, while the 2 weeks cruise was going on, that they would just give the men a 2 weeks leave, for free. This is when the honeymoon came in.
Yay! Wow. So let's just get up to speed here.
Yeah.
So the last letters that she wrote were,
Right.
the last letters that we talked about were in April.
We're in April. Yep.
And so now we're in August. So it has been a long time, but it does seem, did she go out to visit?
It seems that she went out to visit. And so there have been some updates here. The other thing is she comments on it being the 3-month stretch. So where at times in this collection, I'd be concerned and say, where are the letters from May, June, and July? Immediately she disclaims, nope, that's it. So we know that the story is very continuous outside of whatever was going on when she was home in Iowa with the family. It's interesting to see how the train reservations worked. And she paints this whole wonderful scene of the traveling back. And then getting home, and she's looking to clean, and it's just not. Like, oh, well, forget this. I'll just paint the whole thing. It'll look pretty. So.
And this is, she had traveled on the train before with Lou.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that didn't go very well. There's a lot of running and a lot of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
like, it seems like this one, she understands how to travel now. Like she was
Right.
prepared. She's like had things to
Mm-hmm.
keep him occupied. And
Yeah.
to have like little Lewis running around on
Mm-hmm.
the train and people being
Oh
like,
my
how cute
gosh.
are you? You know, hello
Uh-huh.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that is so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, this poor mother's got this little boy who's like, you know, obviously they don't want to sit.
Right.
Certainly not for that long.
Yeah.
So that was nice that they were, you know, everybody was so sweet and accommodating.
Except he ran off with that fur scarf from
No, I
someone.
hope she put it at the right place. That was funny.
Oh,
That
man.
was funny. But this is like when we travel to my hometown, my mom will make up little snack boxes for the kids for their way home too. So I was like, oh, how sweet is that? And then, you know, she had talked about in the last letter how filthy the house gets because of the coal heat.
Yeah.
So you can just paint over wallpaper. I guess you can.
I guess you could at the time, this Chemtone paint. Yeah, I just, So she's like, I'm not going to spend time and money cleaning the wallpaper. Just the idea of cleaning the wallpaper is, nope, I get it. If you can paint over this, then okay, but you've got layer and layer now going on to this.
That's
true. To these walls. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got those layers coming in. Oh gosh. But the paint was doing good. And Lou was like, ooh, this looks really nice. I bet it did look nice and fresh and opened everything up and made a little area in there.
Yeah.
But the most exciting thing is that they're going on their honeymoon finally.
They're finally going on their honeymoon. And before we go into part 2 of the video, I have a few items that we took a look at from the family, I would say, heirloom collection. Now, my father had kept these separate. These were not in the attic. But I finally insisted. I said, Dad, I need to take pictures of anything that still remains. And so we went into this little tiny old box, and in there were envelopes and things wrapped up in old tissue paper. And there's 3 items that, because they were all together, I wanted to show them all at once, because one item isn't related to, 2 items are related to the story. One isn't, but it's something I think, Jamie, that we've been wanting to see. And I didn't realize it still existed. So I'm going to go, without further ado, into the first photo here. And I think you'll be able to guess what this item was. So here's the first item. And it has survived all the years. And we remember back, actually, I think it's to the first episode, she's getting her watch fixed. It costs a lot to fix, and she's constantly breaking this watch. It comes up a number of times. And I would say the vault was the watch. It's a solid gold watch. It was given to her by her parents. And we do believe that this is the watch that's been referenced in all these stories. So I wanted to bring it up because we were looking at the various pieces here. I wanted to get a good angle of it so that you could see. It's quite lovely.
It's beautiful.
Then, now we're going into the honeymoon. So we have to talk about when Sweetie got married. And there might be some new listeners here. And just to recap, Lou and Sweetie met in August. Isn't that interesting? In August of 1943. 4 months later, they were married. So this is back when she was in Osamu. The wedding was on December 3rd of 1943. And at Christmas time, Lou bought Sweetie a piece of jewelry with an inscription on it. So we hadn't seen this previously. These pictures are all going on the website for anybody listening to our audio only. This is that Christmas Day 1943 band from Lou to Sweetie 122543 that he bought for that Christmas. So we didn't get to see it. So I thought now is a good time, since these are sort of associated with the wedding, since we're going into the honeymoon, to show these photos. And then most importantly, from the wedding itself. Now, one of the things here, and I'm going to preface this, Lou was always concerned that his wedding rings would be worn down because he's constantly working around on the bases on heavy machinery. This was a concern of Sweetie's as well. So at some point they take their rings off and they replace them with steel rings, and they're going to save their actual original wedding rings and put them away. So I can show you here, and I'm so delighted to bring up this picture, but these are the original wedding rings. So for both Sweetie and for Lou. And Sweetie's is on the left here. You can see the KFD, Kathryn Frances Demaree. And then you can see Lou's slightly larger ring. You can also see what they were concerned about. One band is much thicker, if you can tell from the photo here. The other band has been worn down. Yes. Because he's wearing it around machinery. So hence the concern. And then they stored them away with these other pieces of jewelry that I just showed, the watch and the band, to keep them together. But as we go into the story of the honeymoon, I wanted to bring up the picture of the original wedding rings because they have survived. And they have been carefully put away. Much to my protestation, I wanted to leave them out longer, but my father was like, nope, they're going right away. Take your pictures and that's it. So,
well, we have to respect that, and that's
we
okay.
have to respect that. But at least, these will be on the website.
The reason that we have them is because they were put away.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right. They didn't get lost or anything like that.
And I think a lot of married couples can relate to this, and I know that some women will be like upset that their husband wouldn't wear the wedding band. And so but I'm glad that they both realized that, yeah, this was not a safe situation. And also when men are working in like machinery or anything electrical, wearing a wedding band isn't safe.
Yeah.
So, but that's I'm so glad that you were able to share those today, especially given that now they're finally, like we said, many other couples who got married during the wartime couldn't have a honeymoon right after their wedding.
That's right.
So now, and it is kind of funny, like what you said, because they met in August. This is an August letter.
It is.
And it's 4 years after the wedding.
Yep.
And they got married 4 months after they met. I like those little
the number connections. Oh man, it's wonderful.
Yes. So let's break in to the honeymoon.
We left the house half painted and in a grand state of disorder. We left Louis with Lou's mother. I held out until the very last minute, insisting that we could take him with us, but I finally had to admit that hotels would charge more for babies' beds, etc., and so we took his bed apart and reassembled it up there, took his clothes, his food, his favorite toys, and left him. He cried when we left, and that made it harder still to leave him. But we did. We had good weather, cloudy and cool, but no rain to speak of. It kept the tires in the car from overheating, and we made good time, even through the mountains. As I say, it was cloudy, and by the time we got up to 1,700 to 1,900 feet, we were phasing through clouds that hung low over the mountain tops. The entire top of the neighbor mountain would be hidden by the clouds. The road ran closely to the river's edge, Susquehanna. We could look across the river to the mountains on the other side. I wish Daddy and Mama could have seen it and enjoyed it with us. We got nearly to Buffalo the first night when a flat held us up, and Lou didn't like the idea of getting on a mountain, risk a second flat and no spare, so we stopped at a tourist home, a big white farmhouse. Really, we stopped at lots of places. The cabins were all rented, and we stopped at several tourist homes to find them full, or else too expensive. They are on the lookout for tourists, and would charge all they could, $4 or $5 a night. We averaged $3 per night, which was really a lot and yet quite cheap by comparison. This woman was an antique dealer, and so the rooms were furnished with very old and very beautiful stuff. She was preparing to go to Florida, and so her cluttered house was in more of a state of upheaval than ordinary, she said. We got up later than we planned, and were later getting into Buffalo than we planned. I was enjoying my new clothes especially on this trip. I had been doing housework and hadn't much time or inclination to dress up in my new dresses, and since I hadn't worn them, this trip was the real opportunity to enjoy them, and I did, too. We crossed Peace Bridge on the outskirts of Buffalo, passed through the toll bridge, 30 cents, on the American side, and the customs house on the Canadian side. They stuck their heads into the car window and rattled off questions quicker than they could be answered. What is your name? Where are you going? For how long? Where were you born and when? And now you, madam, and shot those questions at me. Then they said, pull up to the fence, park your car, open your trunk, and go into the house to fill out visitors' papers. We did. The number of cars was beyond counting. Everybody seemed bent on getting into Canada before anybody else, which meant that you had to buck a crowd worse than Sears offers at their super sales. We did, and I secretly laughed at the flustered people who were trying to impress the officers that their camera was only a very small one, that didn't take very good pictures, and then was surprised when they said they could take any size camera they wanted to. Lou bought oil by the gallon can at the base to save the expense of buying it on the way, and he thought he'd have to declare that, but they crossed it off his paper. It didn't take long, but getting in line again with the car was a job. The drive from the bridge to the falls was along the river, very smooth and flat country. It was about a 30-minute drive, and we could see the rest of the falls long before we got there. We stopped at the power plant on the rapids and got to look around. like saving the best for last, and waiting a little longer before we went to see the Grand Falls.
Okay, I actually wanted to pause here because there's a lot going on just about travel before we get into the destination that they're heading towards, which I think some people are able to suspect exactly where they're going. But this whole aspect of going up through the center of the state, seeing the mountains, the Susquehanna, of course, for those outside of Pennsylvania, is the main river running through the center of the state. And then going up in the mountain ranges and heading up to Buffalo, New York, over the Canadian border. I don't remember this well as a kid because my parents took us over the Canadian border for a vacation back when I was probably, my sister will correct me, I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong, probably when I was about like 10 or 11 years old, sometime around then. Jamie, I don't know if you've traveled into Canada more recently, but this seems like a lot to get into Canada at the time.
You know, I have been to Canada one time, and that was in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Like 2001, 2002. Like, actually don't remember when, but I don't remember like, they kind of were like, okay. And then, we went in.
Wave you along.
Yeah.
Not
it
this
seems
whole interrogation plus park your car and then everybody getting out all the stuff in their trunk and being like, oh, my camera's not that great. The stuff about he was worried about the oil. I don't think we do any of this anymore, or at least the Canadian customs don't.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like people are very like, why couldn't you take, I don't know. But it does seem like there was also a lot of people at that time going in. So they probably were like, oh, we got to get everybody through. We got to ask these questions. I don't know. But anyway, I don't remember it being that bad.
Yeah, it sounds like a very intense way to cross the Canadian and American border. And if this is relaxed since 1947, thank goodness. I don't think people would be able to deal with this these days. So we don't have the patience for this.
In the rapids was an old barge that may have torn loose and started down towards the falls. It had been snagged by some huge rocks sticking out of the water. It was very rusted and dilapidated looking, and had evidently been there for some time, for there was grass and little trees growing up out of it. There's quite a park around the power plant, and on up to the falls. As I said, the mist from the falls or spray, if you like, is seen for quite a distance, but aside from the spray and the noise, you have very little warning, and come up onto the falls quite abruptly, as the drop is very sudden. The water was very, very green. However, the direction of the wind made it impossible to stand squarely opposite the Horseshoe Falls, for the spray was so heavy that it was like a severe rainstorm, and to take any pictures we had to go down beyond the falls, and then shoot back towards it. A sudden shift in the wind, and everybody ran like crazy for their cars, or to escape the direction of the wind. The smaller Rainbow Falls was just as nice, on a smaller scale. We were seeing it from the Canadian side, though there were many people on the American side, and I believe they had the advantage in some ways, for they could walk out on the rocks closer to it. Yet they didn't have the complete view as we did. There were little excursion boats from the American side that furnished raincoats to all passengers, and then took them up close to the foot of the falls, a really very short trip, for a really very great amount of money. We didn't go. There were very large and picturesque hotels right close to the falls, and judging from the well-dressed people traveling in and out of its doors, they were expensive as well as picturesque. There were lots and lots of people there. I saw one Iowa license plate, and was sorely tempted to write my good wishes and leave it on the windshield, but I couldn't recognize the county number 65, I believe, so I didn't do it. There was a sort of inn close by where people ran when the wind sent the spray rain in their direction. It was a case of any place in a storm, and they ran in there, and then felt obligated to either have their lunch or buy some of the souvenirs. And those souvenirs were really expensive, and ranged from chinaware to fountain pens. The prices were out of all reason. I was tempted to buy some things to send to Emma and Chris, and to the rest of you. But the prices made me gulp and shrink from the showcases. But when I came upon a pair of little slippers that I thought especially nice and turned them over to find the price, I saw that they were made in Mexico. Well, that did it. I wasn't going to pay the tariff for bringing them from Mexico into the States, and then from the States to Canada. So I just bought some postal cards and mailed them out, and quickly walked out before my dress tail sent a few things to the floor, and strained British-American relations too far. They'd never gotten those prices out of me.
She's so funny. Like, I love this whole description of the souvenir shops and, like, all the stuff in there. And, like, yeah, she's right. It's totally overpriced, but,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that, this, and, like, for her, like, to talk about the tariffs in this current political climate is
It's
just
amazing that the word tariff comes up in a letter in the spring, for anybody that might be listening in the future, spring of 2025, when the whole discussion's about tariffs right now.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows where Sweetie and Lou are at this point. They went to Niagara.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, does she? I don't remember
She
her
never
ever
mentions
saying
the word Niagara anywhere in her letter. She just leaves it. I mean, the Rainbow Falls she mentions, obviously Canada, Buffalo. People can, and the horseshoe shape, I think people can figure that out. But just in case, Niagara Falls, which had to be a very traditional, and still to this day is a very traditional wedding and honeymoon location for people to go to. Beautiful, beautiful descriptions. And then the materialism of what goes on, the commercialism of Niagara Falls. And there's other areas like this too, where all these places just pop up and there's all these little shops and everything's overpriced.
And it's we just recently went to Niagara Falls. We went to the American side. I've been to both. I've been to the Canada side back when I was in my 20s, and then we went to the American side just recently. And you have to wonder about, like, the what she walked into. There's got to be build up, and the Canadian side has like there's a Ferris wheel over there now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's huge, and the Canadian side is, like, very, very nice, and the American side is kind of a little bit more run down. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why like that is, but you know that what we visit today is totally different from what she saw back in.
Oh yeah, it just kept building and building and building, I'm sure, over the years that have passed since Sweetie was there. But something's never changed at the same time.
This is true. This is true. There's change, and then there's, like, things like, and actually it's really funny. She talks about, my necklace today is from Niagara Falls.
Oh, yay.
This is a Niagara Falls necklace. This was actually given to me by my dad. And this was, like, in the 80s. This was, like, late 80s. So I can only imagine what this would be now, today. It's a pretty nice piece. So yeah, it's I wanted to bring that little bit of Niagara here today. But yes, this is a really cool description. And clearly, like, the price gouging of tourists has not changed.
Yeah. And we do have, now it's interesting because remember a couple weeks ago I was mentioning that I went up into the attic and got thousands of more photos that came down in some boxes. I had not seen photos from the honeymoon trip. Inside one of the boxes were 3 photos that were taken on the honeymoon trip. So the timing, it's just amazing how things have worked out really well. The timing could not have been better. So we do have a few photos from the honeymoon trip that they take to Niagara. And of course, she even says it's hard to get photos of this really well. So we're just going to let everybody see what they were able to get on film here. I can't say these photos are of great quality, but they are authentic to that honeymoon trip. And you can kind of see the falls in the background because she mentions that they were looking up and the falls were behind them. So you can just see them in the distance. It's very, very blurry, but you can see they're standing off on the side. And she's trying to capture that image. With the next one, this is even blurrier.
Oh, good.
Actually, but we're going to put them on the Ruby Genuine. Like, this is what they got. This is what survived. So, the mist. There it is. There it is.
Well, she said it was really, I can kind of see, I can see it. These are trees. And if you look in the corner, you can kind of see, like, where the falls are coming down. Yeah.
They're trying because they want to send photos back to Iowa. Chester is sitting there laying in wait, being like, I've got to see pictures of this. Natural wonder. Luckily, Sweetie does stand in front of the camera for Lou to take a picture as well. So we do have a picture of Sweetie on the honeymoon, standing on the side. And that's why we know the other 2 are in relation to the trip. So there she is.
I love her so much. This must be one of those pretty dresses that she has.
That's right. Yep.
She looks so good. And yeah, she's standing in front of the river. I'm guessing that might be where the falls are, but that river is crazy powerful.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of rippling going on. Understatement, right? Yeah, in that river. So we'll get these photos online. Obviously, audio listeners, go to www.lovesweetiepodcast.com into the photo galleries. I'll put these with the wedding photos. I'll update the wedding album to include photos now from the honeymoon since we're actually getting to see this. All right, moving on to part 3 of the letter, because the honeymoon continues.
We drove on to Toronto, Canada, on the Queen Elizabeth Way, a superhighway brilliantly lit at night that follows the lake right around and makes a beautiful drive. I went into Canada expecting to see a rather poor people with moderate houses and farms, as a hangover from their overtaxed people paying war debts and rebuilding the mother country. I'll not feel sorry for them again. Their farms, the ones we saw along the highway, and the homes in the cities, are beautiful and look as though they must be very prosperous. There are new buildings of one kind or another, homes or factories or farmhouses or barns, going up almost everywhere. The people are very well dressed, and I know darn well that they weren't all tourists who were out at the amusement parks and on the streets at night. We stayed the night in Toronto at a small hotel, very nice and quite inexpensive by comparison. Our room cost $3.50. We were going to go to that Castle Casaloma, as they have turned it into a tourist nightclub, but decided the cost would be prohibitive, and that we could better afford the 25-cent visitor fee during the day and see more besides. We did, and I wish that I could write it all down for you, or better yet, that you could all see it. But here are a couple of the more interesting things about it. Built in 1911, the main downstairs hallway is an exact copy of Peacock Alley in Buckingham Palace. No nails were used in the flooring or walls, but teakwood was imported from Burma and made into dovetail wedges and used in the flooring and the walls of the hall. The marble fireplaces, hand-carved, came from Italy. Water faucets were all gold-plated. There were secret panels and secret passages, a wine cellar and an underground tunnel leading from the castle to the stables, the walls of which are completely tiled, and the names of the horses were set in gold above their stalls, and the family coat of arms adorned every stall gate. It was really a fairyland, even though it is completely unfurnished, aside from the ballroom that is open for dancing. The Sir Henry Powlett was a colonel in the Queen's Own Riflemen, the senior ranking officer in Canada, and he did not spare the cost of anything. He gave the architect the surplus material when the castle and gardens cottage were done. Using leftovers, he managed to build himself a little 25-room mansion a quarter of a mile away. The door leading from the dining room into the solarium are exact copies of doors he saw in Italy, and had them made at a cost of $10,000 per door. It seems hard to believe, but there it all was, and it has gone to such a state of ruin that it seems to me that the Dominion would take it over and turn it into a museum or something. The taxes were $400 per year when the estate held its full 25 acres, but when it jumped to $1,300 per month, the owner turned it over to the city for taxes. They leased it to the Kiwanis Club, who keeps it open for dancing and tourists and turns part of the proceeds back to the city, and the rest goes to charitable organizations. The falls and the castle were really the outstanding things about the trip, of course. The driving through the country close to the lake was fine. You never saw so many orchards in your life, nor so many and such vast vineyards to pass through, the branches meeting overhead, tractors buzzed through cultivating, and alongside the road were boxes of Queen Anne cherries. I think that's what they called them, big and dark red on sale. Many tourists stopped and bought them by the quarter peck just to eat along the way. Everybody had an orchard of one kind or another, right down close to the lake too, and the trees looked so pretty and green, not many cherries could be seen from the road. And of course, the apples weren't very red then. I couldn't help but think how Daddy would enjoy seeing them. We went on around the lake at Kingston, and to the Thousand Island Bridge, where we again went through the customs. We had to swear that we hadn't bought things to take out, and that we were not having anything sent to us by mail. We changed our Canadian money into U.S. money. There is a difference of about 13 cents on the dollar. And then we hurried on to Syracuse to stay the night in another tourist's home. And then we came on home the next day, and I was surely anxious to see Louis. Lou's mother was somewhat relieved to have us come and take him home, but she breathed a sigh of relief and said, "My, isn't he a little Dickens about getting into things?" I thought, yak, yak, but I was sure glad to get him home too. He had started biting, and was having outbursts of temper like screaming, etc. He bit me 2 or 3 times, and that was all after he had been slapped for it each time. He has forgotten it, and while he gets so mad when I make him come in to go to the bathroom, he is about over it. We left on Tuesday at about noon, and were back on Friday at about 5 o'clock. We decided we would put off the trip to the Demaree house until a little later in the season, halfway hoping that Jean will come and get to go with us, and saving it for another outing a little later on. Please send me Daddy's number in the Demaree book, and the address of that Demarest again. I can't seem to find it.
So, I mean, as a libertarian, the taxes were $400 per year.
Yep.
At this estate, at the Casa, what is it? Where was it again? I want to make sure. Casa Loma. And they jumped up to $1,300 per month.
That's awful.
Taxation is theft.
Taxation is theft.
This is ridiculous. Well, it obviously is. I mean, it's not theft. He gave it up because he's like, well, I can't afford that. Of course not.
Right.
How do you budget for that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. We could talk about this all day, but that's ridiculous.
But at that point in time, then it's falling into ruin. So we know this estate is still here in Canada. It can still be seen, but in the 40s, at that point, I mean, it was only 30 years old. She said it was built in 1911. So in 47, not that much long after, it's already falling into ruin. Because if you spend all that money on an estate, and then the city is going to take it back, how is the city going to afford paying for everything? Isn't it becoming more of a burden than the taxes being charged for it in the first place? Just saying.
Like common sense, Allison. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is still in operation to this day.
Yeah.
So, and it is an incredible architectural feat. Like, it's just beautiful. And of course, when you spend that much money, I can't imagine like the upkeep of that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, but yes, but this was a really cool description. And I had to look at it when she was describing this and so I encourage anybody to go check it out if you're in Canada, if you want to do that. But it was a very beautiful state. And then, just this actually, it's very spontaneous. It's just like, let's go drive around and see things and stuff. And it just seems like such a lovely honeymoon. And they only were gone. It was like a few days, so it wasn't too long.
Enough time for G-Mom Graham to be like, okay, I've had it with the kid. You can come back at any time now. Isn't he the Dickens of getting into things? So, yeah, we know about that, about Lewis for now. I love the description of the orchards they're driving past. Dr. Demaree, how much Chester would have enjoyed those descriptions of the cherries and things, because it reminds us that we're in August, that this is the late summer, so we're getting that late summer harvest coming in along the road. And then they start planning for a potential upcoming trip, but they say we're not going to do this right now, which is the Demaree homestead, which is a subject for future time, but that's in New Jersey. That's what they're thinking about making a trip to. So we'll leave the history of the Demarees and the Demarest family for another time, because she's doing the same thing. But heading into the next part of this giant letter.
Well, I threw myself into the second round of painting, and now I'm at least straightened up the way I like to have it. And the chemtone is really beautiful. We did the bathroom in yellow and light green, and it is about 6 times lighter, and the living room in turquoise. That is really lovely and cool. The kitchen still needs some attention, but the walls are yellow and light as can be. The lace curtains in the living room are good for putting up again in the fall, but I needed something a little more airy, and the bedroom curtains. Remember, they were all second-hand to begin with, just plain dissolved, so I took me down to the dime store and bought some paper drapes that I put up in our bedroom and the living room, and while they don't seem very drapey but stiff and starchy, they look very, very nice, and I'm very pleased and very proud. I was careful in buying all our lamp color, and the drapes are light background too, and I really think it looks nice, as I keep breaking my arm patting my back. We have been thinking how very nice it would be if Jean could come and tell us what she thinks of it too. How about it, Jean? Are you coming? I can't help but have a hunch, and yet I'm afraid that your unbending loyalty and idea that the folks should be the first ones to come will keep you from coming. If you are, let me say this. Don't come with the idea of just walking in on us. I'm afraid you'd have too hard a time getting clear out here alone, and taking a taxi would be like undertaking to pay the national debt by yourself. Besides, half the fun is the anticipation, and meeting you at the station. Gee, but it sure would be fun to have you. You haven't been writing very well, and I wonder if you might be going to pull a sweetie on us. I really think it would be best to let us know.
Can we just mention one thing here, and then we'll continue with Sweetie's story? The paper drapes that she's hanging up. Let's remind ourselves, it is now August of 1947. Sweetie still does not have her sewing machine. And now it's been, I believe, just about a year since she placed the order, and they were on back order. Mm-hmm.
She thought she was going to get that for Christmas.
She thought she was going to get that for Christmas. We are well past Christmas.
Well past at that point now.
So if people are wondering, when is she going to get the sewing machine? Tune in next week. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right. And moving forward.
Daddy, that stamp you sent us. I put the catalog away when I painted to keep it from getting spotted and to keep Lewis from mauling it, and so I haven't gotten it out to have Lou look it up. I shall do it right away and let you know. Lou was very pleased that you'd give it to him, asked where you'd had it, and how long, and didn't I think you were giving up something that you really wanted yourself. He says the envelope makes it worth more than if the stamp were just torn off and saved by itself, so he said he may take it to a real collector in Roslyn and see what he says about it. Lewis has carried a sort of cigarette cough since his flu at your house, carries no fever, and up until this hot weather has eaten well, though his appetite is poor right now. He loves to be outdoors, but just lately has started running away. His worst punishment is to come into the house, and so after a few sessions, he will behave for a while, and then does the same thing again. You remember, you gave him a June bug to play with at home. Well, he remembered it too, and so we didn't say a thing when he found bugs to play with, and I cautioned Lou's mother and Elizabeth not to shy away from them, though they don't anyway. Well, the other night, 5 locusts got on their front door screen, hooked their feet into the wire mesh, and promptly shed their shell, leaving the old covering still clinging to the screen. Lewis called them bugs, pointed at them, and asked for them to play with. Well, the other day, one of Elizabeth's girlfriends was there, and Elizabeth gave Lewis one of the shells, and he took it in his hand. She said, "Go give it to Frances." He walked up to her, held out his hand, and when she reached for whatever it was, he opened his hand, and there sat that shell. She screamed and backed off from it and promptly scared Lewis till he cried and threw the locust. Then he fretted about those 2 remaining shells on the screen until we just had to take them down and get rid of them. So far, I haven't noticed that he is afraid of all bugs or whether it will soon wear off. He hasn't found any more June bugs or beetles. By the way, we're suffering from Japanese beetles again this year, though they haven't been quite so bad this year as they were last year. So I don't know whether he is going to shy away from them all, but I'm sorry he got so frightened. Guess it really was Elizabeth's fault, for she was sure that the girl's reaction would be fright.
Okay.
Okay, so did this. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny. I'm sorry. It is a little bit, and she scared Lewis.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny.
Yeah. I love it. It's like the kid's natural inclination to just play with bugs, right? Now, I do believe that this is also genetic for Lewis. I will say there's an ancestor in his past from the 1700s who I believe is like the father of American entomology, and that's Thomas Say. And I've looked this up because I know the whole genealogy, and when I ran into this individual, I'm like, why is there so much information on this guy? Yeah, one of the main early American entomologists is a direct ancestor of Lewis. So I like to say that he's playing with bugs because it's in the blood to play with bugs. But not in this story. He gets freaked out because she's freaked out.
He got freaked out because she got freaked out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's because Elizabeth, and you know that knew.
Oh, yeah.
She
knew exactly what was going to happen.
That's why she did it. That's why she did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are those little shells, and I bet lots of people, like, we all play with them.
Mm-hmm.
My kids and I go out and find them. Yeah. We like to collect them. It's fun. So, but that was really funny. And, you know, this was in the 40s. Yeah. Japanese beetles are still a thing now today. Yep. Like, you know, it's funny to like that this could have been last year that she's talking about.
Right. Yeah. This is a somewhat timeless scene that's happening with the kid and everything happening. But yeah. Oh, man. Great little story. But Elizabeth, sort of mean.
Yeah.
Mama, I have enjoyed these dresses so much, and I've received lots of compliments on them. I wore the play suit to the shore, and then wore it traveling to Canada. And I thank you silently every time I go to the clothes closet. I wonder if you have your electric stove connected and your kitchen chemtoned and some canning done. And there are so many, many things we could talk over if we could talk. I can't help but remember seeing you cry at the station, and I felt so bad about leaving you that I could have walked right off the train and gone back home with you and Daddy. I think of you daily, and I hope maybe this letter will make up for my not having told you about it. I wish you and Jean would come for a visit. I keep wishing it every day. Florence, I enjoyed your cards about your trip, but I don't think that was nearly enough. I've sort of outdone myself on this letter and in writing the details of this trip, but I won't expect you to do all this. Just sit down and write a few of the highlights. Use carbon and include the whole family. Did Rose take care of R, or did you take him to Mama? I'd like to have some pictures of your kids, all the kids for that matter, and if I'm not mistaken, you promised to take some pictures of the clan to send with proper identification for each of them. Do that. I still wonder about them. Maida and Frank, I received your letters and the pictures that you returned to me. We've taken quite a few pictures with the little camera that Frank bought us. We have the rolls in, to be developed new. And so when we get them back and relive a few moments, we'll send them on round robin to the family. I do enjoy your letters, Maida, and we'd like to have some pictures of the children. I don't believe we've ever had one of F, and my visit was too brief to have much more than a fading memory of what he looked like, and he has changed so by now that even my memory is obsolete. I have not had even a postcard from Sister since my return here. Chris acknowledged a birthday card that I'm sure was Sister's doing, but she didn't even enclose a note, and I suppose that is the repercussion of the argument we had over K.M. spitting, and the fact that Mama and I were disciplining her without Florence's consent. You know, it seems amazing that Florence should be so unconcerned about it, and yet Sister would jump down our throats with battle flags waving. Well, I was pretty sure about it then, and if I should take the time to think about, I imagine I could work up a pretty good mad over it yet. But it seems a little foolish to carry on a fight for 1,300 miles by mail, and I really don't hold a grudge too long. And so I'm a little surprised not to have mail from Sister telling of little M's new tricks and what the older children are doing. As I have always made enough carbons to go around, I did so today too. And you see Sister's name at the head. So she shall get her copy, as she always has. However, if I do not hear from her, this will be the last. I do not use this as an apology, or as an ultimatum either, because I think it downright childish to see families or sisters feuding over something that was hardly worth the argument to begin with. But if she feels hard enough towards me that she won't write, or worse yet, won't even add a note to Chris's thank you note, then that is that, and I shall let it go as that.
Oh my. Allison, she put that in the group chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She wasn't like, oh, Jean, and she might be, but she put that in the group chat.
Everyone's getting this message. Yeah.
She's like, okay, so let's break this down. Okay, so Mama and Sweetie were sitting there, and little Miss KM decided to spit, and they were like, ew, don't do that, that's gross.
Right.
And then, so they disciplined her, and Sister was like, KM is not your child. You shouldn't be disciplining her, da da da. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
I'm siding with Sweetie on this one.
Yeah, and she even says Florence was unconcerned.
Yeah.
So it's like Aunt Sweetie versus Aunt Sister handling this situation, and battle flags waving. Just the illustration. 1,300 miles, we're going to carry on this grudge. Okay, that's fine, but I'm going to drop it, and then you don't need to get any more of my letters.
That's it. Ooh.
Wow.
And then she went and mailed it. This is amazing.
Yeah. This is a thing.
She's definitely like, I even wrote in the I was like, she did not. Yep. So I guess that there's that. We'll see how that goes. I don't know, but that was pretty funny. I guess there's family drama. No matter what the year, no matter what the time.
Nope. Family drama. And then Chris, she notes that Chris's thank you note. So for the newer listeners, Chris is Sister's son, Sweetie's nephew. So even Chris is still writing some little note, but not Sister. She's upset. But Sweetie, not having it. I love how she says, this isn't an ultimatum. I don't know. It kind of feels like an ultimatum.
Yeah, that's a little gaslighty, Sweetie.
Yeah. So.
It does feel like an ultimatum. But yeah.
What a moment.
Yeah.
Louis is up now, and I have spread papers and letters all over the table, so that it is impossible to undertake his breakfast until I gather these things up and put the things away. So I must stop now. Besides, Louis is up on my lap, pounding away and moseying the carriage back and forth, so that his will look much like alphabet soup, if I don't stop. We are having cool weather. Many people call it California weather. We sleep under blankets, wear heavy clothes until 10 o'clock, when we start to cook and sweat until about 6, when it begins to get cool again. The mosquitoes are quite bad, so each evening I go around to all the windows with a DDT spray gun. Last year I made a cheesecloth canopy for Louis's crib, and it has really saved him many a swollen eyelid and ear. Louis sleeps late these mornings, allowing me to get my work done, and when he gets up, he frets through breakfast to get outside to play. I try to stall until some of the dew dries off the grass, though he often gets his feet wet. He is generous with his toys, playing with other children, and they take advantage of it too, if I don't watch pretty closely, which I do. He is good about not going out into the street, but I can't help but keep one eye out the door. He loves his books, can pick out everything by picture, and is talking some, and makes a very good attempt at nearly everything. More later. I love you all. Sweetie, Lou, and Louis.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
That was so much.
So much. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so glad that you found that. Because, she talks about her dresses, her new dresses.
Right. Yeah.
And she was feeling very down on herself on our last letters.
Yeah.
So she obviously got to go out to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think this affected the tone because we know she has that inferiority complex.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when she's saying, I did a great job and it looks really good, like with the paint and the cleaning and stuff, she must really be riding high right now. And
yeah.
And those dresses that she talked about, I'm so glad we got to see one because it really did look beautiful on her.
We get to see the picture of the dress that's being mentioned. It's like a recharge when she gets out to Iowa. Mm-hmm. There's almost no, or maybe even none at all, of a hint of that inferiority complex in this letter. She's got her battle flags drawn by the end of it, and then she basically has to give up because Louis is messing with the typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, can't do any more. Done. I'll write more later.
And you can even see in her letter, like, because Allison keeps everything true to what it is. You can see, like, he obviously was getting in there and messing up her words a little bit.
Yeah. She wasn't going to get much further. It was gonna get tougher at that point on. So we can all see why she's wearing down. And also, what a monstrously large letter that she writes. But she's catching up to 3 months, as she says. And we get all of the updates about the family. I mean, it's this one, when I came across this letter in the collection, I was like, oh. And my father had never heard the story about the honeymoon before years ago. And I was like, have you heard where they went for their honeymoon? He said, no. Well, he wasn't there, of course, but I don't think they really talked about it too much, or at least when he was older, it didn't really come up. So I know that he was excited to hear that story for the first time, to see where his parents had gone, because, of course, they were married during wartime. But they made up for it. Yeah. They had a great honeymoon. Very good honeymoon. And with that concludes our episode of the Love Sweetie podcast for today. As teased, please listen in to next week's episode. Sweetie has been waiting for something for a very long time. And it's also going to be Louis's second birthday. So as we head towards the fall and as we head into the fall of 1947. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll look forward to seeing everybody next week as we continue Sweetie's story. Bye.